Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon. And of course, it might be evening somewhere, it may be morning and afternoon here in India. So, thank you so much. Welcome. This is a very exciting subject. The Gift City, the new offshore financial center that India has now come up with. Let me tell you a little background, and I think this was one of my personal desire to have this kind of an enclave for a very long time. Uh, just to tell you a little story, way back in 1977, when I did my master's in law with globalization and international tax, and then I did global studies, I found that almost every continent, every country has some enclave where you can breathe fresh air and you can experiment. So whether US, which had Cayman Islands and other kind of jurisdictions, UK had Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man, Far East and Singapore, Malaysia, you have over a period of time in Africa that Mauritius came up later on. So, it was very important for us to have some kind of a breathing space. And because India was a very controlled economy at that point of time, not the way in which you see it today. And so when I did a lot of comparative studies, and then I felt that why not we should have some place where we can experiment with new financial instruments, experiment with new financial structures, and stuff like that. So when I wrote a book in 1983 on international investments in the context of India, I had written a chapter on setting up a free zone or financial center in Andaman Nicobar. This was way back in 1983. And I had made presentations to government at that point of time, but obviously the time was not possible, right? And over a period of time in 1989, when India reached some kind of a bottom, and India opened up in 1991, and at that point of time, I had been contacted by Mauritius government, and I had talked about it, and then we set up this offshore financial center in Mauritius, and it came to be a successful one, very good experiment. So that happened, and all of at one point of time, Mauritius invested possibly largest amount, almost 48% of FDI came through Mauritius, and that there were two principles I had in my mind. One was that the jurisdiction must be open and transparent, and number two, that it would be good to focus on fund industry, because I think institutional players bring much more credibility and much more, I think, robustness to the financial center. Because many islands have going to be, companies and stuff like that, which we did not want to have it. So over a period of time, I think, and the treaty with India and Mauritius just worked out fine. And one of the problems with India at that point of time, and particularly most of the investment was expected to come from the US. And the way in which capital gains rules are written in India are exactly opposite to the way in which they are written in the US. So if you have capital gains tax paid on sale of shares of Indian company at that point of time and now, the tax creditability in the US is a problem, and especially for tax exempt investors and other kind of investors as well. It was kind of an issue. And Indian tax rates were also pretty high. And, so while doing all this studies and research, they had stumbled on Mauritius and then worked with Mauritius to have. So Mauritius was used, as you all know, and no need to repeat too much about it because of the treaty that granted tax exemption to capital gains on the sale of shares to Mauritius entities. And they did a wonderful job, no doubt about it. And all exchange of information and other kind of, environment was present, so it was easy to work around that. And if you put it hindsight, a lot of people think that Mauritius was used to avoid taxes completely, but that's not true. Mauritius entities which are set up, they actually didn't have to pay tax in India, but when the residents, particularly from the US, took money back from Mauritius into the US, they still have to pay tax. So whole idea was to avoid double taxation of the same income rather than avoiding tax altogether. I think that is the basic genesis of the Mauritius India Treaty. Then over a period of time, uh, uh, had an opportunity to help Singapore government, MAS, and other ones where we talked about fund industry. It came up a lot of changes, and now Singapore has been doing extremely well and a very robust regime that came up. And sometime in 2007, Prime Minister Modi, who was then the Chief Minister of Gujarat, wanted to set up an infrastructure fund for Gujarat, and we went to Singapore. And at that point of time, we were walking on the boat quay, and he said that why can't we do something like this? And I said, of course we can do it if we have real desire to do so. And asked for a note, and I set out a chapter from my book, which I had written in '83, and what was written for Andaman Nicobar. I think it just came handy. And so obviously at that point of time, being a Chief Minister of Gujarat here, control over Gujarat, and Gandhinagar was selected to be an offshore financial center. And 2012, it was notified, and the way in which the whole scheme of this gift city, which is called Gujarat International Financial Services Center and Technology City, that's why it's called Gift City actually. And works is that it falls under special economic zone regime. Now, special economic zones are having two kind of things. One, you have traditionally technology companies, which always were there, and all of you know about it. But second part of SEZ was International Financial Services Center, and so there are two aspects to it. One is the International Financial Center, other is the technology side of the business. So the Gift City, as far as IFFC is concerned, there are a number of things that are, or particularly let me say about four things. One is the banking, offshore banking can be done. There could be offshore capital markets, like GDR has just been, or ADR has just been done by Dr. Reddy's laboratory. We have now alternate capital markets, or say asset management industry, and so and other kind of headquarters and stuff like that. Other side is technology, where BPOs and the high-end processing zones and stuff like that are being developed. So that is how the structure is. And let me just ask Parul to show the presentation so that you have a little quick understanding of what is it about and where is it and all that thing. A lot of people may not know where is the center. It is in a place called Gandhinagar, which is half an hour from city of Ahmedabad. And so many of you may not know about the location. So this just gives you the red spot there is Gujarat and Gandhinagar Gift City. It is located on the banks of Sabarmati, connecting the business capital Ahmedabad, and it's a political capital, as Gandhinagar is of Gujarat, and it is a seamless transport connectivity. So when you this kind of zones, it is just not that it has some tax exemption and stuff like that. It must also have reasonable infrastructure, which is available there. It is about 20 kilometers from Ahmedabad. And also it consists of multi-services SEZ, so there are different kind of services will be there. And also there is a part domestic tariff area is there. So 261 acres are demarcated for special economic zone, and even domestic companies can also locate there. So with 625 acres of the area that is demarcated for that. So let's go to the next slide, Parul. Yeah. Now, very interestingly, GIFT is a new kid on the block, and City of London has done a study called the Global Financial centers index 28. And if you see, Gandhinagar Gift City has been ranked number one in terms of the one that is likely to become more significant. And as you can see on the right side, that there are, broad and deep markets to relatively broad market, relatively deep market, and the emerging markets again, Gift City comes up on the top. Next slide. And as you can see, this gives you more detailed statistics about the Gift City ranking. And again, it's a reputational advantage is also pretty good there. So all said and done, there is a kind of regime which has some reputation globally. Again, at times it came to me also as a surprise that it was a ranking on the top. So I think the world is paying attention. Sometimes we maybe not recognizing the advantages that we have. I think that is the importance of this slide. Next one. And these are the competencies that are identified by City of London in the Global Financial Services Center Index. And one is the business environment, then human capital. As you all know, that India has huge human capital, and that can be deployed into this Gift City. And you can establish the professional personnel are available in abundance in India. Infrastructure is extremely good there. And then, of course, financial services sector development, again, there is reasonable depth in the whole thing, and reputation, as I mentioned. So these are broadly the areas of competencies. If they are properly leveraged, it can do very well. Next one. And the tax benefits, tax holiday for units in International Financial Services Center, 100% reduction is available for any 10 consecutive years out of a period of 15 years. Reduction in minimum alternate tax, it has been reduced to a level of 9% in IFSC, which derives income in convertible foreign exchange. A waiver on applicability of securities STT has been waived, of course. Also on the capital gains tax is reduced rate at 10% LTCG. These are things maybe already known to you. Exemption from filing income tax return, which was one of the concerns for many foreign investors. So when non-resident invest in Cat 1 or Cat 2 AFs, they're exempted from filing tax returns in India, provided the fund has deducted appropriate tax to the government. Then there is an exemption from obtaining permanent account number. Again, that is often the concern of foreigners, which has again been done. And gift AIF is taxed as a pass-through, just as domestic AIF is done under Section 115 UB of the Income Tax Act 1961. Next one. Yeah, so these are some of the structures that you can see here. So as you can see in the center, it's about Gift City jurisdiction, and above that is other jurisdictions offshore, and India is at the bottom. So if you set up Cat 1, Cat 2, AIF is a trust, and you have an investment manager also located in Gift City, because now human capital and putting people there is not too difficult. It can invest in Indian portfolio companies, as you can see below. On the other side, it can also invest offshore without any restrictions on the investment abroad. As you know, domestic funds have certain limitations, approval of SEBI and overall limits and stuff like that. I won't again go into detail for those who already know about it. So you can have more freedom to invest even in non-India jurisdictions. At the same time, you have flexibility to invest in the Indian. And when the management fees are paid to the Gift City manager, there will be no gift tax, and one can, of course, what is the substance and what are the criteria? Those are being laid out, and very soon we expect the Gift City to come up with some kind of clarification on that. But our interaction with the chairman of Gift City has been very, very helpful, fruitful, and they'll come up with some reasonable guidelines from that part. for that purpose. Next one. Again, here is also a structure where Gift City Fund, which is shown in blue, dark blue, it can invest in domestic fund as well and invest in the underlying portfolio company, same way. And offshore investment again can be done without any restrictions and more or less the same thing. But this shows that it can invest directly into India and also it can invest in parallel in domestic Indian funds as well. Next one. Again, you can also have FPIs, CAT fee as well, and again, they can invest abroad, and you can have. See, one of the things is just about tax. I think it's about the human capital that is available in India, and that can be more easily deployed without the hassles. And as far as foreign non-resident investors in CAT fee are concerned, their income also would be tax exempt because non-residents investing in Gift City Fund and getting income in relation to non-India investment that would be tax exempt in the hands of those foreign investors. And there'll be no capital gains, no other income for non-India income. So it can be used as a good jurisdiction too. Then as far as the investment in the Indian securities market is concerned, they can also do the same thing. And of course, they have to obtain FPI license for that purpose again. And then the portfolio investment, there is main income from, the transfer of derivatives and other kind of instruments can also be done. So, these are some advantages which whole idea is to establish a genuine CAT fee fund, and you have Indian people, Indian talent deployed there. Next one. Yeah. So I think these are broad features, and I would, of course, my colleague Parul, would you like to say a few of the requests that we had from Gift City, and then of course I would like Renuka to also elaborate on some of them if she likes, and explain the importance of our suggestions to Gift City, which I think are coming up. So, Parul, we had requested for some 7-8 points, and if you just want to give a little glimpse of what we have requested for, and maybe Renuka can then chip in. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thanks, Nishith Bhai. So when we look at the entire setup of funds in Gift City, there are a lot of advantages, and Nishith Bhai spoke about some of the advantages when we were going through the presentation, including you can actually Gift City works almost like a mid-shore jurisdiction where from a tax perspective it is considered to be an Indian resident setup. But from a foreign exchange perspective, it is considered to be a foreign person. So therefore, the pooling can happen in foreign currency, and the entire management happens in a way onshore through the mid-shore jurisdiction. So this gives a very, a very good flexibility that you get the benefits of an offshore jurisdiction, but you can also control and manage the entire funds from India. Nonetheless, there are, and the Gift City authorities, along with income tax authorities, have over the last 2-3 years also brought about a lot of clarifications and a lot of changes to the law in order to make the structures more flexible and more feasible for AIFs to be set up in the Gift City. Nonetheless, there is, along with, Renuka as well, we had prepared a list of some, 7-8 points, which, if addressed on, on a very soon basis, could really help a lot of people who are thinking of setting up funds to consider Gift City as a top jurisdiction for pooling in funds from foreign investors. So I'll just go through some of these issues and some of the asks, and we can then take this up as the session moves along. I think the first issue that we have faced practically is this whole fund of funds kind of an issue. Now, when a Gift City AIF is set up, uh, technically under the SEBI AIF regulations, a fund can invest into units of another fund. However, the interpretation which is coming out through regulations and practically also the view which is being taken is that if in case there is an AIF set up, then the AIF can either just invest in another fund, which itself is not a fund of funds, or it can invest in other portfolio companies. It cannot invest in portfolio companies as well as invest in another fund. Looking at the entire Gift City fund regime, foreign investors are permitted to invest in a Gift City AIF, but currently the FEMA provisions do not really permit domestic money to be pooled into a Gift AIF, which means that there will have to be a domestic AIF which is set up, and the Gift AIF can very well pool in money into the domestic AIF. But the lack of clarity comes in as to whether the Gift AIF will be permitted to make parallel investments and investments on its own accord in other companies in India as well as globally, as well as invest into a domestic AIF in India. And when we compare this to an offshore jurisdiction, today a Mauritius fund or a Singapore fund can pool into a domestic AIF, but it is not really prohibited from investing in any other jurisdictions or even making parallel investments in India. And that's a very regular structure. The first ask that we've had is that, at least to clarify that if there is a Gift AIF which is set up, it should be permitted to invest into a domestic AIF as well as, follow its investment strategy, investing globally as well as investing in other portfolio companies in India. So I think that was one of the first asks. We've also requested, as is the global, as is globally followed by a lot of offshore funds, to allow leverage to be taken by Category 1 and Category 2 AIFs. Now, today, a domestic AIF is not permitted to engage in leverage, except for certain purposes, interim borrowings not going beyond 30 days and limited to 10% of its corpus. If one were to set up an offshore fund, then such restrictions would not be allowed, and it's a very globally accepted practice for foreign funds to engage in leverage against the capital contributions that they receive from their LPs. So if the leverage is permitted in a Gift AIF, we believe that that would be a substantial advantage that one would get in a mid-shore jurisdiction, and would go a long way for a lot of fund managers today who are looking at setting up their funds and exploring offshore jurisdictions to immediately migrate to a Gift City jurisdiction. The third ask that we had was with respect to diversification. Now, again, today a domestic AIF has to mandatorily invest at least, it cannot invest more than 25% of its corpus in one entity. So we've requested that such diversification norms should not really apply to a Gift AIF. It should be treated at par with other global funds where there are no such restrictions. And restrictions, if any, should really be, as per the private placement memorandum of the Gift AIF. And along with it, then, therefore, the whole concept of pooling in funds where each investor has to proportionately invest in all the investments. That should there should be some flexibility around it, because while we do have flexibility for certain excused investors, like insurance companies and all, which are not permitted to invest in certain types of investments, to excuse them from investments. But to provide sort of flexibility from pooling in proportionately from all investors, and also permitting co-investment by certain investors who would want to invest larger share in another portfolio company. This would again, put the Gift AIF at par with with another Mauritius-based or a Singapore-based fund, and just give a little bit more flexibility to fund managers in raising capital and in deploying the capital. The next point is, it's a very crucial point from the perspective of doing deals in India. Now today, if there is a domestic AIF which is set up and it is managed by an Indian manager, which is Indian owned and controlled. And when we talk about Indian owned and controlled, we talk about control of the board composition. We also talk about ownership being more than 51%. As long as the Indian manager is Indian owned and controlled, the funds which are pooled in by the domestic AIF, those are considered, investment of those funds are considered to be domestic investment. And restrictions under FDI policy with respect to pricing or sectoral, they don't really apply. It's as good as making a domestic investment. When we look at a typical GIFT City structure, the GIFT City fund is going to be set up by a manager from, the domestic area outside the GIFT City, but either through setup of another fund manager in the GIFT City or setup of a branch in the GIFT City. Ultimately, this fund manager, which is set up in GIFT City, it will be owned and controlled by domestic fund managers individually, either through a domestic fund manager or directly. And so technically under the FDI policy, if one were to look at the technicality around it, the gift manager should be considered to be Indian owned and controlled. And so therefore investments made by the gift AIF should be exempt from any pricing restrictions or sectoral restrictions as apply under the FDI policy. But there is still some sort of a lack of clarification there, purely because the gift manager will be considered to be a person resident outside India, even though it is owned and controlled by Indian residents. So, the ask is that give the same status as there would be, and this is more like a clarification. There's no change in law that is required to be done, but a clarification would just go a long way to ensure that there is no litigation on deals that happen subsequently. The next one on requirements. Now today, a gift AIF or its manager, primarily the manager. Singapore has its own substance rules. Mauritius has its own substance rules. So therefore, some substance requirements, whether it's with respect to the number of people who should be employed by the gift manager, and keep it. So substance requirements with respect to either expenditure or with respect to, the number of people who need to be employed by the gift manager, where they should. These structures, even from, a GST perspective. And, because from a GAR perspective, at least the fund manager will be eligible to take a tax holiday, and it will not also be, even though there is a MAT of 9%, but if it elects for a 22% rate of tax under the, under the provisions of Income Tax Act, along with the tax holiday, then it may not be required to pay any tax in GIFT City. And that's one of the benefits and advantages which have been provided, by the government for units set up in the GIFT City. The next one is on, it's a very special ask. And, when we look at setting up a fund in the GIFT City, the GIFT City fund may operate, on a standalone basis. It may not really, it's not really a conduit, but it's really a standalone fund, which is pooling in investments from institutional investors and investing in India. It may therefore align with the investment strategy of an existing domestic fund. And it's really important that these two funds, a domestic fund as well as a gift fund, should not really be regarded as joint ventures together, or what we call an association of persons under the provisions of Income Tax Act. Because if that happens, then the entire structure could be treated as one, the GIFT AIF as well as the Indian AIF could be treated as in one entity, which could be subject to tax at Indian tax rates and, not really apply the pass-through benefits to foreign investors. So this AOP issue, which is more relevant in case of two funds investing together, we've requested that this should be taken up with the CBDT, and some clarification should be issued that while technically the two funds are not really partners together, just because they are investing together, even though they have separate management, but at least some clarification should be issued in order to give some level of certainty to foreign investors. I think primarily, Nishith bhai, these are the points. The whole overall perspective is to incentivize migration from offshore jurisdictions to India, because these are really the low-hanging fruits. And if we put in some of these, provisions in place, then migration to GIFT City will be quite easy.
So thank you very much, Parul, for your elaborate explanation on the things that are needed to be done. And later on, we'll hear from Dipesh Bhai and Manoj Bhai about, IFSCA, the role and stuff like that. But in the meanwhile, I would like Renuka to come over and react to some of the things that you said and what she thinks of it. And it has been wonderful working with you for a long time, Renuka, and I must congratulate you for being the first fund. Is number 001, I believe.
Yeah.
It is important, like not 7, but you have really taken it up, and I think you are going to add a lot of flavor. And I think when somebody like you take GIFT seriously, it means there is something really happening, And I would like you to have a little freewheeling discussion, whatever thoughts you have, and how we can together with GIFT City to see that this becomes, as expected, a top emerging financial center. So anything that you want to say, I would love to hear from you. I won't take too much time at this point in time, but then I will request this to talk.
Yeah. Honestly, I think both your presentation and Parul's articulation has very holistically and beautifully covered the possibilities of GIFT City. I would have precious little to add. First, I want to, on behalf of IBCA as well, and not just multiples, very sincerely thank Mr. Injiti Srinivas, Dipesh, who has worked so hard for so long, and Mr. Manoj Kumar for coming up with the guidelines that they have come up, listening very actively to the need of the industry, and working with an intent to really onshore the offshore business. Very, very sincere thanks. I think the progress that has been made is quite tremendous. Normally, one of the frustrations we have as practitioners in India is, everything is seen as, I'm giving something to the industry. And why can't you do with little? Why are you asking for more? Whereas in this particular case, the experience thus far has been to really listen to the industry and ask, what is it that you need to onshore the business that you are currently offshoring? And let me give you everything that you need so that there are no excuses made to, bring in. So far, directionally, the approach, at the thinking level has been, simply superb. And I hope that everything that Parul articulated, some of it has come into fruition from the yesterday's circular. And I hope for the balance as well, we have a constructive dialogue the way we have had so far, and make GIFT City a serious success from a fund management industry, because that's all that I'm representing. Nishith Bhai beautifully articulated 3 other big purposes that GIFT City can serve, to expand the business. I'd like to say that, one of the refrain we have is, for many problems that we have in the domestic market, many times we are shown the direction that why don't you go to GIFT City? So I have been a very active proponent of saying that the purpose of GIFT City is not to push domestic business into GIFT City. It is to bring international business into GIFT City. So if somewhere GIFT City officials are also mindful of the fact that, the whole purpose is to bring the international business. Somebody has to answer, why should I be in Mauritius or Hong Kong or Singapore when I have everything and more in GIFT City? And GIFT City should not willy-nilly end up solving for the problems that domestic market has for domestic managers like us. So that's point number one. Point number two is that, I would also like to reiterate that if very quickly there can be clarity in terms of what is substance in GIFT City. This is a discussion. I think Nishith Bhai's firm has also produced a paper. We had a conversation with Mr. Srinivas on a Saturday, 2 or 3 weeks back. That would be an important, kind of an imperative for us. And also, if there can be clarity on this Indian owned and controlled, as again, Parul beautifully articulated, because that would establish parity, with the structures that are available in India. So we don't want inadvertently that GIFT City is disadvantaged because of this lack of clarity, because if it gets the same status as an Indian-owned company and the privileges of investing in restricted sectors as Indian money, because it is managed by Indian managers and controlled by Indian managers, it would set the GIFT City pooling at par with what we have today in the AI structure in the domestic market. Lastly, I want to say that one of the big questions, while again, underscoring and emphasizing how progressive the thinking of the officials in GIFT City has been, and how comprehensive is the, reforms that they have brought about. Mauritius, let's junk other destinations and do GIFT City. One of the responses that we fear we would have is, no, we are very comfortable. There is a set process, the administration is known, the tax structures are known. We are very, very comfortable, and don't ask me to change something that is already working well. So to that extent, we had proposed that there be some tax concessions made for GIFT City for a period of time, we can say 3 years or 5 years, which can be a great lure, an economic lure for international investors to very actively consider GIFT City, because while it has all the advantages of other jurisdiction, it has an added economic incentive in the short term of paying lower taxes on the capital gains that they would make. And then it would become a way of life in the next 2 to 3 years, at which time, even if you withdraw this economic benefit, they would have tasted GIFT City, they would have become comfortable, and they would then carry on with the same jurisdiction of GIFT City. So if this can be kind of very actively thought of as to what's the sweetener, what's the push, what is the draw that GIFT City can have just initially to get kick-started, is something that I would want to leave it as a very important consideration if GIFT City can apply their mind, so that we get that initial push to bring international pooling into GIFT City and then continue. I'd really stop here and thank both NDA and GIFT City for giving IBCA this opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you, Renuka. IBCA actually did a lot of groundwork. There was almost 42 pages of presentation, and it was that also helped us to zero in on the 8 or 9 points which are priority, and that really helped. So a lot of groundwork that has been done. IBCA, we must thank IBCA profusely, and other professional firms like PwC and others also helped to put together all those So we are grateful to all of you for coming up. And what I would like now to do is to ask Dipesh Bhai the role of IFSCA in International Financial Services Center Authority, and what is it about and how it has come about. I think it is we work together on the ideation of that, and it has really now come to a fruition. So I think, can you just tell a little bit about IFCA? And also tell, now you've heard us, so you can react to some of those suggestions, or if something has been done or can be done, and how are you looking at it. It will be, once again, a little freewheeling discussion. So over to you, Dipesh Bhai and Manoj Bhai.
Thank you, Nishith Bhai, and thank you, Renuka Ramanathan, for your continuous support and guidance as always at GIFT City, and also for the IFFC authority that we've been receiving from all of you. I must at the outset apologize to the audience, because you are not here to listen us. I think you are waiting to hear from our chairman, Srinjek Srinivas. Unfortunately, at the last moment, he had an finance secretary urgency. We had to step out. And what we are going to do is obviously not to highlight from the perspective of what all businesses have been enabled, but what we want to highlight, as you rightly said, on the role of IFFCA. I think two role has been very well articulated in the act of the IFFCA. And if you really see the starting point of an International Financial Services Center Act, this is an act for development and regulation. The way the development has been emphasized in the opening of an act really set the tone for the new authority to come up and ensure that the development, as we always see, that should be more enabler for more and more businesses and structures to come in. So what we are doing is, as a part of this exercise, well, all of you are aware between 2015 to 20 what all has happened, but from April 2020 onwards, when this authority got notified, and now we have the headquarters in GIFT City, and now fully functional from 1st October 2020, all the powers from the sectoral regulators, SEBI, RBI, IRDA, and PFRDA, has been now based on the IFFC authority. With this powers being given, what we are seeing is a clearly responsibility on the IFFC authority. Now we can go back to the domestic regulators and say that, look, this is not in our forte and this is falling into some other domestic regulators. But I think what we are clearly seeing is domestic regulators also coming on the board of the IFFC authority, and that's where we see a lot of synergy now. They are part of this whole development, and the authority has been given the task of ensuring that the development and the regulation are aligned with the market expectations. What quickly we can highlight is three areas on the banking, insurance, and capital market. Capital market is a vertical that we believe is going to be and always a vertical which will expand much faster and bring in much more players than the other verticals can do. And obviously the capital market is fortunate to have intellectual supports from players like Nishith Bhai and all other firms which have been very, very supportive. And I have also been sharing this dais with Manoj Kumar, the Executive Director at IPSCA. I've seen and been working with him for 5 years now. Believe me, the type of the approach that he brings on table and the type which we are seeing in the IFFC authority. Yesterday afternoon, we had a discussion pre-call with Nishith Bhai on some of the issues, and the evening some of the issues were sorted out and been already on our website as a circular, which really tells you the urgency and the approach that this authority is taking up. And we clearly see this could be one zone which can very well match and complement what other financial centers are doing. We always say that we are not competing, we are complementing what Singapore is doing or what other financial centers are doing, because a lot of our own financial brains at some point of time thought that they could do these businesses and structures in India, but could not find the right enabling regulatory framework and support to enable that in the domestic or in the international zone. So fortunately now the government has provided that clear demarcation of role and a clear mandate to develop this in line with what has been done in other global financial centers. We have seen now close to 130 registered international financial services center entities. We've seen in banking side 15 entities and 3 foreign banks being licensed now, and close to $30 billion of transactions already been completed by them till date from their inception of this banks here. We've also seen insurance around close to 20 entities been enabled here, and we are seeing a lot of new private large entities applying for license to come here. And on the fund and on the capital market side, we have 2 large international exchanges with close to $5 billion of average daily volume happening. We have close to $51 billion of masala bond already listed here. And yesterday was our first maiden ADR dual listing of Dr. Reddy on the IFFC platform, which also now set the tone for the delivery based transactions to come in terms of listing of GDR, ADR, and obviously we are looking to go further in terms of how do we bring equity listing also of the Indian unlisted companies and foreign companies also. So in a way, the capital market entity with exchanges, with broking entities close to 40-45 already operational here, and the AIF, which is now getting operationalized with the first license being issued to multiples, and quite a 4 or 5 we believe are in an advanced stage of that application. In fact, we have got 2 applications for the fund administrators to come in, and they are very keen to get started as soon as possible. So in a way, the whole AIF business and verticals is clearly marking its presence, and I'm sure our friends in Singapore, Dubai, Mauritius are taking note of this, and they will also in a way try and figure out the structure which is more conducive for them to come and operate, as Renuka Ramanathan was saying, to use your own financial center and onshore the services which at some point of time you always thought could have been done under the Indian structure much efficiently at a much lower cost. And that we believe this zone provides, cost of operations, the tax regime which is now aligned to the global best practices, and a regulator which is a unified, which means your proposals can be given as a single window and all your responses comes on a much faster space back to you. With this, we believe that we have done the initial foundation of this new authority, and believe me not, because I am in the IFFC authority saying, we have seen the dynamic nature of the first IFFC authority chairman, and he is in a man with a hurry. He is looking to set this authority with the right perspective and benchmark with the global best practices. And clearly in each our interaction and our circulars which are coming out, more and more emphasis comes on a clarity as to what clarity we provide to the end users and how fast we can enable them in terms of their getting operational in the zone. With this, I'll stop here because I think you want to hear the man who is really behind the AIF, and that is Mr. Manoj Kumar, the Executive Director at IPSCA. He's on a daily basis coding, and every time I pass through him, he said one circular issued. So I think I must hand over to him. He's the man for the capital market here.
Thank you very much, Nishith Bhai, Dipesh Bhai, Renuka Madam, and of course Parul, because Parul has set the agenda. And I am very happy as a regulator that many of the asks which you were mentioning, we already fulfilled yesterday. And probably you missed our circular. So we would request that our website should be regularly visited by all of you. And because every day we are proactively issuing some circulars, guidelines, etc. And another point which Dipesh mentioned, that we are the unified regulator. We are not unified in terms of 4 regulators coming into one, but we are also unified in terms of our listening ability. We are very keen to listen to all of you. not only those who are sitting in the panel, but also the participants who are there. And from that perspective, I have with me my entire team who is sitting, who is handling AIF. In fact, you would have noticed Arjun Prasad's name. He is also very attuned and he is very keenly listening that if any other ask is left behind, he will maybe by the end of the day or maybe in the couple of the days, he may come out with another circular. So he is the real man, and along with him, there is another team member, Ruby, who has just joined us, and they are all very geared up to ensure that whatever asks are emerging, that should be handled very promptly. Having said this, I believe that three of the core asks which Parul highlighted with respect to leverage, with respect to co-investment, have been adequately addressed, and we believe that this will definitely benefit the participants, and they can think of exploring this AIF hub which we are trying to create here in this jurisdiction. As far as registration process is concerned, first registration always takes a little bit of time, and since we were in the transition phase, because as some of you may be knowing that myself and Arjun, we have been here on deputation from SEBI, so there was a transition, and our role was to ensure a smooth transition. That's why ISCA has also granted it as a first registration, and we want to see many more registrations like this, and we are simplifying the entire registration process, because the thrust of entire regulatory thinking here in IFSCA is to ensure that onboarding of various participants should be extremely simple. It should be single window, and you will definitely find a huge change with respect to onboarding of participants going forward. Now, apart from that, while AIF industry is one segment which we have focused very hugely, and we believe that with the active contribution from IFCA, we will definitely have many more funds to come up and set up and try to test the whatever regulatory regime we have enacted, because unless you test our regulatory regime, we will always feel that we have done enough. As I think probably Madam Renuka Ramnath was mentioning, that we always feel that enough has been done. So sometimes regulators have that thought process, and we will also feel that we have done enough. So you test us that no, you have not done enough. There are still many things to do, and we will be happy to do that. Apart from that, we are opening in other segments also. For example, mutual fund is one big area where we are very keenly focusing, and we would love to hear from all of you in the panel as well as from the participants, that if they have any suggestions in that direction, they can come to us anytime. We will love to hear them out on their issue. If apart from this you feel that like Dipesh ji has also already mentioned, that aviation is one area where we are very keenly working to have some traction. Similarly, Global In-House Center is one initiative which we have already created, and we are working in that direction. You know that we have already created a wonderful infrastructure in terms of MIIs. Our market infrastructure institutions are fully in place, and they are fully functional and operational, and every day they are bringing some new products in the trading zone. Apart from that, if you feel that there are certain areas, certain issues which need to be addressed, you please highlight to us. Though we are a very small team, but we will promptly respond to all of your expectations. And just to add that there is one area related to insurance. That also we have constituted a committee under former LIC chairman and SEBI chairman Mr. G.N. Vajpayee, and that committee is going to give us a very comprehensive roadmap how to take and activate the insurance vertical. And just to inform all of you that today that committee is going to hold its first meeting, so you will soon start seeing enough traction in insurance vertical also. With this, I must thank you all for supporting us because we are new regulator and we need your support constantly. And I would request now Nishith Bhai to take over. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Manoj Bhai, and of course I must thank Arjun Bhai also for joining. It's been wonderful experience, but let me, I think, tell one thing, that many a times authorities are empowered, but the power is not really used well. Whereas our experience here is it's used so well, they are faster than us at times, Usually business sector or the lawyers are laggards anyway, but you moved so fast. I would request that we accelerate this pace in terms of our approval process. Like in SEBI, sometimes to just get registered AIF and all that takes 5 months, 6 months. FECA takes 1 year or 6 months. We don't know. I think they have so much to do, but unfortunately they may have resource, constraint, and therefore some. But as far as GIFT is concerned, we have to establish a global reputation for being the fastest with the highest quality. So it is not just they approve and something hush hush and stuff like that. We would like to see that. But for example, if any application comes for approval, within 21 days time, it must be either approved or it should be responded. We should not sit on non-responding, something that you want information. Okay. So speed is going to really differentiate us. And if whatever we can do that would be very helpful. And as IFSCA has been vested with all these powers which can override the traditional powers of SEBI, IRDA, and RBI and other ones. So I think you've got a great now enabling environment to move things fast to go it at a global stage. Second point I would like to make, and which feature we did not have time to discuss, is Sandbox. In fact, I think GIFT City also has a Sandbox regime. Sandbox means it's a laboratory to do experiments. So, in fact, in the coming weeks, we are talking about looking at security tokens and digital assets and stuff like that. All the countries in the world, no country has banned cryptocurrency. Okay, in India, it was prohibited for some banks, but then Supreme Court has delivered a judgment to say that it's not illegal, and at the same time, so I think we can leverage on this while protecting the interest of consumers. So I will be happy to provide you. We have done some work on self-regulations in that area and other regulations. So if we can begin to think of the future and begin to frame our broad regulations for GIFT City and work with the speed of thought, I think these are a few things we should differentiate. And obviously, then the expected, top ranking would materialize. And I think within this group, there is so much abilities to think forward and work around. I think that's the main thing. I would think the speed is very important. And some of the other things would be, there are aircraft, apart from aircraft leasing, there is something on fractional ownership of, aircraft. It has become very popular globally. And, securitization already you have taken care of in many ways. So many things, not only at India level, but at a global level that can be done. And one other regime I would like to put in place is that if there is any issue or controversy, then we should have an ability to settle. One of the issues in India is that the litigation, it happens. Sometimes interpretation could be one at the regulator side and at the regulated side, the other one. And there's mismatch, and if people take a genuine view of the situation and act upon it, then there must be some way for settling the case and be done with it and move fast forward. So if we can also have some framework for settlement of cases, that would also be very, very helpful, including tax settlement or regulatory issue settlement or whatever it is. Life is too short to go on for all these things. So whatever it is, just do something and go ahead. I think those are the things I have. In fact, we spent almost hour and 15 minutes without even realizing how fast the time goes. Maybe, I don't know if there are any questions we should be taking up. And Sudhir Sethi was likely to be on the, he is one of the giants of Indian venture capital industry. And if he is there, maybe Mukesh, I would request to open up, for him to make a few comments. And if you're there, I'm thankful to you for staying on. Sudhir, are you there by any chance?
He's not the internet.
Okay, no problem. So maybe he'll be joining tomorrow night then. So, but I think this is what we are at, and we are definitely hopeful that we will be able to, take this move fast forward. And it is not just an age of competition. It's not that you're competing with Mauritius or Singapore. It's an age of competition. What you call cooperate and compete, a healthy competition. And so all these jurisdictions which have done a great job, I think we have to learn from each other and see how we can put more open, transparent, and of course, one good thing about GIFT City would be that it would be FATF compliant as well. So in terms of reputation, it already has a good, good perception. So that's another good thing. So I think I'm not sure if anyone would like to ask any question from.
Nishith bhai, if I can just add to what you mentioned, because I think this is a wonderful forum to just disseminate certain information also. We have already created a very robust mechanism of regulatory sandbox as well as innovative sandbox. And it is comparable to any other jurisdiction in the world. And our challenge here was to unify the 4 sandboxes which sectoral regulators were having. So we have done that. Now the 2-tier structure of regulatory sandbox which we have created is one is which will be stationed and operationalized at a MII level. When I say MII, I am referring to market infrastructure institutions like stock exchanges, depositories and clearing corporations. So they will operate the innovative sandbox, and the idea is that any new startup or any idea which wants to test a particular set of data or particular set of product, they can come and they can explore and use the data which is available with the exchanges, repositories or clearing corporations, and they can test their idea and technology over there. And second stage, if they need any further regulatory exemptions, etc., from that perspective, the testing can be done at a regulatory sandbox level. So this environment is available in domestic jurisdiction. It is fully operational and functional. Here we are very keen if your audience or through your good offices we can have some ideas which people want to test it, we will facilitate that both at an innovative sandbox level as well as a regulatory sandbox level.
Yeah, I think you're on mute. You're on mute.
Some questions we have received. Parul, can you read out the questions and I can answer, and some of us can answer? Please discuss names of the fund.
We already have a setup in Mauritius. What is the biggest advantage of moving to GIFT over Mauritius? I think this is a question which gets asked very often. Why should one move to GIFT rather than stay in Mauritius?
Yeah, I think we already discussed that, with first of all, it's easier to establish substance if you're real managers in India, number one. Okay, so non-tax issues. Second thing, that even the GST, exemption could be available, and even with the Indian owned and manager syndrome approved, it will be in a better position to invest in India. So there'll be no discrimination as far as pricing is concerned or the sectoral investments are concerned. And
right.
If anybody wants to chip in something, you can chip in.
Yeah. I think, yeah. Sorry, Dipeshwar, you want to add something?
No, I was just saying the overall cost of operations also in the zone is
Yeah.
very, very competitive.
Yeah. In fact, for efficiency and those things, entity setup will be easier there.
Yeah, but sorry to play the scratch record, but if a tax incentive, at least for the initial 2 to 3 years, can be considered, that will be a great push, an
Yeah.
economic push. While, we do appreciate there are many, many advantages, but, an economic incentive for us as GPs to go and tell our LPs that let's change the structure, makes the case very compelling. Just the initial one.
In
So
the
you
initial
are
years,
you are
capital
talking of
gains
the
tax
redomicile?
exemption. No, redomiciled or otherwise, for first 5 years, she says, for example, that let there be no capital gains tax on the exit from the Indian company. Right, Renuka?
Yeah. Or a lower capital gains, whatever best. I mean, we would ideally prefer no capital gains, let's say for 3 years investment, let's say.
The first movers can be given some special benefit, so then
Yeah.
people would like to come in.
And then you demonstrate that it is already working very well, that international investors see no difference between operating from a foreign jurisdiction and gift jurisdiction. And then they say that if we have to go to India, India has an offshore center, why should we come from another country? But for
You
the
can
initial
also,
push, because, very practically speaking, Mr. Dipesh, when we go to our investors and say, let's do this, their immediate question is, oh, are you doing this because you will not pay GST? What is in it for us? So to try something new. So
so
I
the way in
thought,
which it,
Yeah, that's why
sorry
the
for my
category
interruption.
3 tax regime, which you have seen, which was passed in the monsoon session, you have seen the category 3 tax regime, which has come out, is very, very competitive. And that was based on the industry consultation and their ask, and the government has, CBDT has already accepted that. We believe that takes care as a category 3, but apart from that, there are any, we will anyway offline discuss with Nishith Bhai.
yeah.
I think one quick thought here, you can also provide that whatever investment is done in first 3 years, that will be eligible for capital gains tax because you are not going to exit in 3 years. And then you get a
Exactly.
half the tax rate for another 2 years,
Yeah.
and then have full, that is another way to get traction a little faster. That could be one idea.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Nishith bhai. Yeah.
No. Or any other question?
I think I'll just add one point. There's something similar which has already been done for sovereign funds.
Yeah.
Something similar for investments which are made in the.
Lost you a little bit in between, Parul. So can you repeat?
Yeah, sure. No, I just wanted to say that something similar wealth funds. So maybe on similar lines, it can be considered for gift city funds as well. Moving on, the next question is it possible to open an office or international trading desk in gift city instead of opening offices in international jurisdictions like Singapore? So I think this should be possible. I mean, it's a financial service unit. But Mr. Debesh, Mr. Manoj, we want to add.
See, if I understood it correctly, probably the intent of the question is whether branch structure is permitted or not. So we are working on this aspect where we will try to facilitate the branch operations in GIFT IFSC. So far, for a trading member or a clearing member, the requirement is that they have to necessarily float a subsidiary, and that subsidiary has to obtain a membership. So we are very proactively looking at this because we are trying to create a branch structure which is adequately ring fenced. Because as all of you know that trading member and clearing member have huge responsibility in terms of servicing the clients and investor protection. So we are working on this, and soon you will hear from us. We will try to facilitate a branch setup.
But foreign companies can set up branches in GIFT City for headquarters or for. Can you just explain that?
No, I think what current regulation requires is that if you want to do intermediary services in capital market, you need an SPV. You need a separate wholly owned subsidiary or a separate entity. However, for banks, for foreign banks and others, we have allowed branches. So they can come as branch and they can register and operate. But capital market side, what Manojji was trying to highlight is that we are actively considering the participation of foreign broking or intermediary firms to bring them under a branch structure so that it's easier for them to get operationalized.
Yep. Okay, next one. We have about 10 minutes to go, 9 minutes. So let's say about 7 minutes for that and for concluding remarks.
Then the next one is on GP approval, which is required for putting in the GP commitment or the sponsor commitment, including if there is a manager which is set up in GIFT City, which is owned by an Indian manager. So how would the approval work? How much time it takes, and what would be the requirements? Also considering that the GIFT AI would be in turn investing back into India. So, Mr. Devesh, do you want to talk about the process? I think we've already been given approvals for setting up investment managers in GIFT City, including for the sponsor commitment.
Yeah, so currently the requirement is for a sponsor commitment. If what the question was that it's an Indian manager who is setting up an entity here, then under the RBI ODI mechanism, you have to bring in the money here with an RBI ODI approval. If it may be under the automatic or under the approval route, that process needs to be followed.
Next. You're breaking.
So the question is whether the GIFT AIF set up as a category 3, since it will need an FPI registration also, then whether the GIFT AIF since there will be an overlap between
I couldn't hear you well. Could you hear Dipesh bhai? Or understand?
No, sorry, we could not hear. It was Parul, you were breaking when you were speaking.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the question is whether one has to SEBI application.
You may want to. Parul is still breaking. You may want to turn off your video and try and speak.
Sure. Yeah. So the question is whether FPI regulations as well as AIF regulations need to be met when setting up a category 3 AIF in GIFT City.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah. I think, Nishith bhai, I'll come back to the questions. I'm facing some internet issues. Maybe you can take over.
Yeah. Okay, anyway. So, I think it is already 25 and it's been wonderful interaction. First of all, Renuka, let me thank you so much for spending an hour and a half here. Without your contribution, this would not have taken forward.
My
first of
pleasure.
all.
It's a very efficient. Thank you.
Very respected guest, and your experience has been amazing. And you are both the Diane of Indian private equity VC industry and also a women leader. I think amazing job you've been doing. We are very proud of you. Thank you. Dipesh bhai, thank you so much. I think, and Manoj bhai, these are very, very useful interactions. I think we should continue doing some of these ones. We had many questions. A couple of them we could not take. We're running short of time now. We can always take offline, and feel free to contact us. And I think our other supporting character is Ipsita, Arjun Bhai, I think Mukesh, colleague, who has been supporting technology. They are ready. Let me thank all of them for a wonderful support that has been given. And I'm sure this is the beginning of a great journey, and this will always be remembered for a long period of time. I think whatever we're discussing today is setting a good direction, and we are just on the runway, and I'm sure we'll soon be taking off. So I think fasten your belts, and and people are not flying so much these days, I think. But I think it will be all virtual flying now because whole world has gone virtual. So please, I think with little effort, I think we'll be soon on that takeoff, and I'm sure this is going to be an amazing experience. As I said, it was always my dream since 1983. Looks like a small time now to see some kind of an offshore center here, which was clean and competitive, and allow us to do experimentation and kind of a lab for our ideas in the financial services sector, tech sector, and stuff like that. So I'm very, very happy. Thank you so much. Maybe we can close this. And Renuka, you have a word, or Dipesh, you have something? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Whatever are the residual issues, I'm sure Dipesh and others will take it up quickly so that we can hit the road running. Yeah.
And
thank you.
Just for the information of all, I think tomorrow night we'll have a same session at 10 o'clock for the US audience in particular. Others are all welcome. We have large number of registrations for even tomorrow night's session, and hope to see you all. And your friends, please communicate to them, and most welcome. Thank you once again, everyone.